So today we're going to start what I'm calling episode 1 of our audiophile switch, Ethernet switch, HiFi switch discussions and Ethernet cables and experiments and things of that nature. The previous video, which I'll link to below, is kind of the general overview of some of the topics we're going to cover. And that we'll call episode 0. This is episode 1, where I'm going to talk a little bit about what songs I use for the testing, my methodology, and then also in this particular episode, we've tested, I'm looking here at my testing notes, guys. We tested 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different, what I'm dubbing entry level or mass market type switches, something like a TP-Link that you can get on Amazon for anywhere from $30 to $50, $60. Actually, I think the highest priced one was $70. We're going to work our way up then to the mid-fi or the mid-range pricing of the mass market ones. What does $150, $200, $250 get you in those switches? Does it get you better sound, better isolation? Or is it all the same, just more ports, more features? And then we're going to go up to this baby, which is a Paul Pang Audio quad switch, which, as you can see, actually has 4 switches built in, and we can use 1, 2, 3, or 4 switches. I'm going to do some testing on that compared to the mass markets and things of that nature. I want to start off by saying that, look, Ethernet audio cables. Guys, I was an Ethernet audio skeptic, and I absolutely was a switch skeptic. I am totally into the audiophile type stuff. I got all this gear here, even just for the microphones and stuff. I love playing with this stuff. Yes, stuff makes difference, but to me, an Ethernet cable, I just couldn't fathom, because when you read the stuff on the internet, well, it's ones and zeros and nothing else, and it either works or it doesn't. Or how could something like a switch, which comes from your router or from the wall, if your router's in a different location, into a switch, how could that make a difference? So I came into this not looking to prove a theory, frankly, just thinking it was all fluff. What I did do, though, is I wanted a baseline. And so I purchased all Blue Jean cable, category 6+ cables. And the reason why is this: it's all made in America. It's every single cable, individual cable, is tested, and they send you the specs on every single one. Because frankly, guys, there are a lot of cables out there on Cat 5, 6, 7, 8, all that stuff on Amazon, wherever. Cable comes from China. It does not meet the specs that they claim it does. There's a lot of bogus cables out there. So I wanted something that I knew had a baseline that was legit, and we were getting what we were paying for. On average, I think the shorter runs, I've bought a whole bunch of 1, 2, and 3 footers, and then obviously the longer cables. On Amazon, I'm paying anywhere from $11. I think the most expensive one was like $20 a cable. Not to be confused with something like the Sablon cable that we will be testing. And we've also got some SOTM cables and filters that we'll be testing. They range in price up to about $750 a meter. So we are going to cover all of it to see if there really is a sound difference. We've also got a Supra cable, which is very popular with HiFi streaming and audiophile streaming. It runs about $50. I think it's from Switzerland. Very interesting test results between that and the Blue Jeans cable. So that kind of covers it in a nutshell as to what we're doing. I burned all the cables in and all the switches for a minimum of 100 hours. And what I did is I hooked them up to the Apple TV and the TV, and I just kept the signal going through it nonstop. I also followed the writing on the cable. That's typically how I keep my cables directional. So if the wording on this went Blue Jeans cable, to me, the signal would come here and the signal would go this way. The signal goes the way of the writing. So that's how I kept all the cables directional. You know, you can argue whether or not it makes a difference. I'm certainly no scientist, but I was trying to keep everything consistent to minimize any types of differences. We also carried out the tests on the switches with the units plugged into the wall. I mean, as you can see, they came with really crappy power supplies for this stuff. And into the power conditioner. We also tested a variety of 5-port, 8-port, and higher to see if there's difference, even in the same models, if there's a difference between port. My thinking on that was sometimes the 8 ports or the larger have got a little bit larger power supply in them. Will we notice any type of difference on something like that? In this particular episode 1, what we tested is the TP-Link, the 5-port. It's the SG105. Guys, I'm going to link to all these items on Amazon down below. Full disclosure, I am an Amazon affiliate, so if you do click the link to buy them, I get a tiny percentage to go towards operating costs, but I don't make any money. I bought all this stuff with my own money, okay? We've got the TP-Link, and I'm looking at the model number, so I tell you correct, the TLSG108PE, which is an 8-port version of this, but it's a PoE, a power of Ethernet. It's a larger version. I tried that one and I also tried the non-PoE version of the 8-port of the TP-Link, because the PoE version has a larger power supply, a much larger power brick, external power brick. Again, I wanted to see if there was a difference in that. Also, there's different shielding and things of that nature within that. I wanted to see if there was a difference that way. Also tried 2 different Costco does not make Ethernet switches. Cisco branded ones. Both of them failed to hook up to the Ethernet in my system. In talking with Cisco and doing some research, it just didn't like my router. So I didn't even mess with them. It wasn't worth the hassle. Finally, all of the switches I've tried are unmanaged switches. So you have a choice when you buy these to do managed or unmanaged. Unmanaged mean plug and play. Plug it in, an input, plug out, an output. A managed switch is you connect it, there's usually an app or a website, you go online to control it, and you can set all your parameters. Guys, I wasn't getting involved in any of that stuff. It wasn't worth it. So we stuck with unmanaged switches on all of them. So I have 3 test songs that I used for this, and I'm going to tell you what they are, why I use them, and what I listen for. The first one is by a group called Above and Beyond. It's the song Alchemy. I like that song because it can tend, and by the way, all of this was, again, streamed through the rows on Qobuz because I found Qobuz to sound significantly better than Tidal. I like Alchemy, the song, because it can sound sibilant at times on anything other than an ideal system. There's also a point with the singers where it's very easy for the main singer and the backup voice to sound on top of each other and almost as one. Again, in a better system, they're gonna be separated and more diverse. It's got really good rhythm to it, bass. It's easy for it to sound lethargic on some systems. So if everything is acting correctly, you're gonna have really great rhythm and timing with it. There's also a point where the guitar strums kind of in the background, and on the better systems, it just kind of hangs there and it's smooth and it's effortless. On less than ideal systems and equipment, it's going to sound metallic-y, stringy, and kind of harsh. The next song is, again, by Above and Beyond. It's a song off of their Live at the Hollywood Bowl, acoustic at the Hollywood Bowl series they did. It's a mixture of the 2 songs, Counting Down the Days and Liquid Love. Guys, I'm going to tell you that you need to watch the video of that song first, and here's why. If you listen to just the audio version, you don't know what there is, what you're missing, what you can hear. On the videos, you're going to see so much of the orchestra, the singers, who's doing what, a harpsichord, a harp rather, harpsichord, a harp, and all those instruments, so you know what you should be listening for. And I will tell you, I used to be very disappointed in the audio version only of that. I used to think the video version sounded better. It always sounded very flat, one-dimensional, did not sound live at all. The audience sounded fake. It was just what I thought was a horrible recording. Through these tests, I've now realized it's a brilliant recording. It's absolutely incredible. And through all the different steps and layers, I kept uncovering more and more of the music and the rhythm. And there's a point at which when the violins kick in, you can see on the video how intense the string section gets. You can hear that in the music on the better systems, whereas on the non-better system, the non-better gear, it just kind of sounds all one note, if you can even pick up that they're there. There's the drums that they're hitting. You can hear them distinct and fast and individual hits on the better resolving systems. On the less resolving systems, it's kind of just all mush. There's a significant difference in the rhythm and involvement on the most resolving systems and musical gear rather than the non. So what ended up turning into what I thought was a terrible recording, when you get the better gear and you get everything tweaked, is actually a brilliant recording. Last song. Can't forget the last song. Holly Cole Trio. Her song Every Day Will Be Like a Holiday. Great recording. You can hear the stand-up bass and the piano, and they kind of play against each other. What's interesting is that on the best systems, the stand-up bass and the piano almost have a little bit different rhythm and timing and pace. You can pick up on that very easily along with the decay of the piano, whereas on the less resolving systems, again, it's all one note, it's very flat, and on top of that, the piano tends to come from just one side, whereas on the more resolving systems, you can hear the piano and the decay spread out more across the stage. It was recorded all at the same time, them all performing at the same time. All right, so now let's get into the actual test results. All right, so these are the results of the entry-level switches, ranging from about $30 to $69, I believe was the most expensive one. And first I'm going to give you my overall impressions of them with the model numbers, and then I'm going to get into the actual, what the setups were and how I used it within the system, and going from worst to best. Because each time I did that, it got better and better and better. And every time I thought, wow, can it get better? And it clearly can. So the first one is I'm looking at the model right here on my notes, is the TP-Link, which is this. It's the TL-SG105 5-port. Very, very sibilant. I was really disappointed in this. It sounded completely flat, but I will tell you, we also did a Netgear, and I don't think I included this before. I had a Netgear GS108. I don't think I mentioned that earlier. That in Europe was really popular along the Ethernet audio guys. It supposedly sounded really, really good. I will tell you that the Netgear GS108 here, and again, it could be the difference of the power supplies. They're 220 volts or somewhere around there. We're only 110, so it is different internals. Was horrible. It was flat. It was the Netgear was just the most unmusical, and I will tell you right now, the worst of the worst. So very disappointing in that. This was extremely sibilant, very flat sounding, but was a little bit better in terms of openness between this and the Netgear. I also, on all of them, to keep it consistent, I had the input on spot 1, and then I had the output going to the streamer on spot 2. And there was, in terms of sound, on this unit, there was no difference between whether the output was number 2 or the output was number 5. I wanted to see if there was a difference with the internals as to where the output was traveling on the inside. There was no sound difference. again, excluding the Netgear, this was the most thin sounding of all the switches. So that was kind of my first experience of like, there is a little bit of a difference. I'm surprised. Next was the TP-Link, the TLSG108, which is the 8-port version of this. It is the PoE with the power of the Ethernet built in, so it's got a much larger power supply. It was significantly less sibilant than this one, but it also sounded more dead, a little bit lifeless and less playful sounding than some of the others. It was a bit more airy and a little bit less flat sounding than this one. And on that one, port 2. So again, I went in on port 1, came out on port 2. Port 2 as an output sounded better than the other ports. So that one sounded different on there. It also sounds a bit fuller overall than some of the other switches, but it is at the expense of detail and tonality and emotional reflection in it. Again, I can't believe I'm actually saying this about a switch, guys, because I was kind of like, whoa, these differences are pretty obvious to hear. Then we compared the non-PoE version, so basically this exact one as an 8-port without the power of internet. So it was a slightly larger power supply than this one with a more normal size plug, and in all these instances they were plugged into a power strip, not a HiFi power conditioner. Okay, that was the best of that group. It was the best. It, again, port 2 sounded better than the last port. The last port sounded a little bit flatter than port 2 for an output. It was open, airy, had better Pratt, but it was a little bit more sibilant than the PoE version, definitely less sibilant than the 5-port version. Again, the 2 Ciscos, we did not try because we couldn't get them working. The Netgear was so horrible, I never included that in the rest of the testing. So now let's talk about the results. The way the system is set up, again, it comes out of the router on the second floor, into the wall, down the wall, out of the wall on the first floor where the system is, and then into the various components from there. Ultimately, it makes its way into the Rose 150B streamer, into the Luxman 509X, and ultimately onto the Klipsch La Scala speakers. In worst place, and in first of all of our trial and error, it was coming out of a short run, coming out of the wall of the Blue Jeans cable, the RJ45, into the 8-port, the regular 8-port, the non-PoE, and then a 15-foot run of the Blue Jeans cable into the Rose. That sounded okay, but it was thin and sibilant. So then what we tried to do is reverse it. I took the 15-foot Blue Jean cable out of the wall to go to the streamer, and then I took the non-PoE 8-port TP-Link, because remember, of all the tests earlier, that sounded the best of that bunch, into that, and then I had a very short run, 1 or 2 feet from that switch into the Rose. This actually made a difference. So all I've changed is the location of the switch. Is it by the wall or is it by the streamer and where that long cable was? This sounded a bit better, a little bit more open and airy and spacious. Just a hair though, okay? It wasn't much, but it was definitely there. The next step was, what happens if I use 2 switches? What happens if I come out of the wall with a very short run into the PoE and the more heavily shielded TP-Link, the 8-port TP-Link? Then I had a 15-foot run to the Rose streamer into the winning 8-port TP-Link, and then a short cable into the Rose. This was a bigger step forward than the first trial. What that noticed is that now the piano from Holly Cole seems to, it's more from both speakers rather than just one. The stage opened up. It was a little bit more decay that I could pick up on. The saxophone in that song sounded a little bit more realistic. And that was the bigger step forward so far. Not huge, but it was definitely noticeable. Okay, you didn't have to kind of strain to say, am I hearing anything? It was there. The next one is to take the short cable out of the wall into the 5-port. Now remember, this was one of the most sibilant of them. 15 feet into the winning TP link, which was the non-shielded, the non-PoE 8-port, and then a short cable run into the rows. Guys, that sounded actually really bad. It was very thin. It was just outright not listenable. You were better off to do just the long run cable and just the single. You are better off to do the single cable, the long cable into the TP link at the rows, just a single switch was better than the crappy 5-port by the wall and then the 8-port by the streamer. Then we tried doing the shielded TP port up front, the PoE up front by the wall, 15-foot cable into the winning 8-port TP link. And I tried the 1 meter Supra Cat 8 cable. Now, everybody says how amazing the Supra Cat 8 cable is from there into the rows. I gotta tell you, didn't really hear that much of a difference between the Supra Cat 8 at $50 for the meter and the $11 Blue Jeans Category 6 Plus. I mean, I felt like I was trying to force myself to hear a difference, and I kept going back and forth. I could not hear a difference. At this stage in the testing, and this is going to change, but at this stage in the testing, I was like, what are people hearing in this cable? I almost initially thought maybe the pace had slowed with that cable, but going back and forth, I realized it didn't. I think it just something wasn't right, but I wasn't impressed. I actually preferred the $11 Blue Jeans cable over that one. Now I tried something different. And up to this point, this was going to be the winning scenario. I did a short cable out of the wall. I did the shielded PoE 8-port TP link into the long cable, into the non-PoE 8-port, the TP link, and I plugged that by the rows into the AudioQuest 1200 power supply, into the then Supra cable, the 1 meter Supra Category 8 cable, and then into the rows. Up till now, this is by far the biggest difference of anything I've done. It was quite a big difference. The Pratt factor, the pace, the rhythm, and timing was noticeably better. The boogie factor was definitely there. And this is how I measure that, guys. I do 2 types of listening on everything. I do the analytical listening where I'm trying to figure your stuff out. And then what I do is I turn off all my brain in terms of trying to be analytical and trying to figure it out. Just kind of sit there and listen and just stop analyzing it. And my foot is either going to start tapping by itself without me even knowing it, or it's not. And that's how I measure, in my extremely non-scientific way, how I'm feeling about the rhythm and timing. So I'm not trying to convince myself one way or the other. It either happens or it doesn't. This time I absolutely noticed it. It was the biggest step of everything I've done up till now. And that leads me then and then when I went back to the Blue Jeans cable, in place of the Supra, now that I'm plugged into that AudioQuest, now I could hear the difference between the cables. Now there was a bigger difference between those cables. The Supra cable had a little bit more air to it, still just as sibilant, and this is still not ideal by any stretch of the imagination of where we end up, but now we're heading in a direction where we are getting noticeable differences. So I'm going to stop the video there, and I'm going to record episode 2. We'll take it from there, and what we've got coming up now is, now we're going to have, and I'm looking at what we have upcoming here, we're going to have multiple switches in line, more than in the same location. We're going to add power conditioning to different switches at different locations. We're going to add in a D-Link switch. How does the D-Link 8-port compare to the others? Additional filters and cables from SOTM. We haven't added the Sablon yet. And we're going to start testing the mid-grade mass market switches, along with, we're eventually going to get to this sucker, the ultra high-end switch, which I can't wait to try. So guys, please, I've spent a lot of time. I've got 50 or 60 hours into this testing so far. A lot of money tied up in this gear. Please just take a moment, subscribe, hit the like button. Really would appreciate it. You also want to be notified when the upcoming videos are coming in the next couple of days. At this pace, I probably have 3 or 4, at least more videos of the testing process and what we've discovered. And I will tell you that the testing is further ahead than where the videos are. And I got some awesome, really exciting results coming up that I'm really excited about. And I can't wait to share them with you. So guys, please like and subscribe. I'll see you soon.